There are moments in life that arrive quietly, no warning, no fanfare, just a single sentence that changes everything. For Claire Hastings, that moment came on a Saturday evening in late autumn, beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. But to understand what happened that night, you have to go back. Back to when things were different. Back to when she still believed. Claire met Daniel Hastings 7 years before the gala. She was 26. He was 29. She worked as a junior architect at a mid-sized firm downtown. He was climbing the corporate ladder at a financial consultancy, hungry and determined in a way that felt contagious. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant. He talked about his goals, his vision, the life he wanted to build. She listened, and somewhere in that listening, she saw something she wanted to be part of. Not because she needed saving, but because she believed in partnership. She believed in building something together. 3 years into the marriage, Claire made a choice. Daniel's career was accelerating, faster than either of them expected. Long hours, business trips, client dinners that stretched past midnight. He was exhausted, stretched thin. And so, quietly, without announcement or resentment, Claire made a decision. She stepped back from her own career. Not forever, she told herself. Just for now. Just until things stabilized. She took on more at home, managed the house, handled the logistics of their life so that Daniel could focus. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself it was love. And maybe at first it was. But somewhere along the way, something changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was the kind of change that happens in the margins. In the way he stopped asking about her day. In the way he began to speak over her at dinners with friends. In the way his gratitude turned to expectation, and expectation turned to assumption. By year 5, Claire wasn't his partner anymore. She was his support system. By year 6, she wasn't even that. She was invisible. Daniel's company promoted him to senior vice president, corner office, executive perks, invitations to events that mattered. He began to move in circles that felt polished and distant. People who measured worth in titles and square footage. People who asked what you did before they asked who you were. And Claire, who had once designed buildings, who had once sketched skylines in coffee-stained notebooks, became the woman who stayed home. The woman who made sure his shirts were pressed. The woman who smiled beside him in photos, quiet and composed. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was happy. But late at night, when the house was silent and Daniel was asleep, she would sometimes stand in the kitchen and wonder when she had become so small. The invitation arrived in early November. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, a gala hosted by the Regional Business Coalition. An annual event that brought together executives, investors, city officials, and anyone who wanted to be seen as someone who mattered. Daniel held the invitation like it was made of glass. "This is it," he said. Claire looked up from the counter where she was chopping vegetables for dinner. "This is what?" she asked. "This is the event," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "Everyone's going to be there. Everyone." He paced the kitchen, phone already in his hand, already drafting messages. "I've been trying to get Mitchell's attention for months. If I can get 5 minutes with him at this thing, Claire, 5 minutes, it could change everything." She wiped her hands on a towel. "That's great," she said. He didn't look at her. "I need to make an impression," he continued. "I need to be sharp. I need to show them I belong in that room." Claire nodded slowly. "You will," she said. He glanced at her then, just for a moment, and something flickered across his face. Not warmth, not gratitude, something else. "You'll come, obviously," he said. "It's black tie. I'll have Sandra send you some dress options." Sandra was his assistant. Claire set the knife down carefully. "I can find my own dress," she said quietly. Daniel was already looking at his phone again. "Sure," he said. "Just make sure it's appropriate. Nothing too bold. You know how these things are." He left the kitchen. Claire stood there for a long time, staring at the half-chopped vegetables on the counter. The weeks leading up to the gala were consumed by Daniel's obsession with the event. He rehearsed talking points in the mirror. He researched every major attendee. He bought a new suit, new shoes, new cufflinks. Claire watched him prepare the way someone might watch a storm gather on the horizon. Inevitable, unstoppable. She bought a dress. Simple, elegant, navy blue. Nothing too bold, as instructed. She had her hair done the day before. She made sure everything at home was in order so Daniel wouldn't have anything to worry about. She did what she always did. She made it easy for him. The night before the gala, Daniel couldn't sleep. He paced the bedroom, talking through scenarios, imagining conversations. Claire lay in bed, eyes open, listening. "I just need them to see me," he said, mostly to himself. "I need them to see what I'm capable of." She didn't respond. He didn't notice. Eventually, he fell asleep. Claire stayed awake longer, staring at the ceiling, feeling a weight she couldn't name pressing down on her chest. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Daniel was up early, anxious energy radiating from him like heat. He went for a run, came back, showered, changed clothes twice before settling on something casual for the afternoon. Claire moved through the house quietly, making sure everything was ready. She pressed his shirt, laid out his suit, polished his shoes even though they were already polished. She didn't do it for him. She did it because it was easier than confronting what would happen if she didn't. By 5 in the evening, Daniel was dressed and ready. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time. "How do I look?" he asked. Claire stood in the doorway, already dressed, already ready. "You look great," she said. He smiled at his reflection, not at her. "Tonight's going to change things," he said softly. Claire didn't respond. She picked up her purse, and together they left for the gala. The drive was quiet. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly, his jaw set in concentration. Claire watched the city lights blur past her window. She thought about the woman she used to be, the woman who had presented designs to rooms full of skeptical investors, the woman who had stayed up all night perfecting renderings because she believed her work mattered. That woman felt very far away now. "Remember," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the silence, "tonight is important. I need to network. I need to be focused." Claire turned from the window. "I know," she said. "I just mean, don't distract me. If I'm talking to someone important, just, you know." She looked at him. His eyes stayed on the road. "Just stay nearby, but give me space. These people need to see me as a serious player." Claire's hands folded in her lap. "Okay," she said quietly. He nodded, satisfied. The rest of the drive passed in silence. The Riverside Grand Hall stood like a monument at the edge of the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble columns, a circular driveway where valets in crisp uniforms guided luxury vehicles into neat rows. Daniel pulled up to the entrance, already scanning the crowd gathering near the doors. A valet opened Claire's door. She stepped out into the November cold, her breath visible in the air. Daniel handed off the keys and immediately straightened his jacket, his eyes tracking someone across the entrance plaza. "That's Henderson," he muttered, "VP at Meridian. I need to—" He was already moving. Claire followed a few steps behind. Inside, the Grand Hall was exactly what its name promised. Vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across polished marble floors. Round tables draped in ivory cloth. Each centerpiece a careful arrangement of white roses and gold accents. A string quartet played near the far wall, their music floating through conversations like smoke. Everyone here looked expensive. Not just wealthy, expensive. The kind of people who never thought about money because they'd never had to. Daniel's energy shifted the moment they stepped inside. His shoulders pulled back, his smile sharpened. This was his arena. Claire watched him transform into the version of himself he saved for rooms like this. Confident, charming, effortlessly important. He grabbed 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter, handed one to Claire without looking at her, and began scanning the room like a predator assessing terrain. "There's Mitchell," he said under his breath. "Near the bar. I need to get over there before—" "Daniel!" A voice cut through the music. A man in his 50s approached, hand extended, smile wide. "David Pearson," the man said. "We met at the CFO Summit last spring." Daniel's face lit up. "David, of course! Good to see you." They shook hands. David's eyes shifted to Claire. And this is... There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, but Claire felt it. This is my wife, Claire, Daniel said, his tone polite but flat. David smiled warmly and extended his hand. Pleasure to meet you, Claire. She shook his hand. You as well, she said, but Daniel was already redirecting. David, I've been following your work with the Harbor Development Project. Incredible vision. And just like that, Claire ceased to exist in the conversation. She stood there, champagne in hand, smile fixed in place, as the two men talked. After several minutes, David excused himself. Daniel watched him go, then immediately turned, eyes searching. I need to find Mitchell, he said. Claire opened her mouth to respond, but he was already moving. She followed. The next hour unfolded in variations of the same scene. Daniel would spot someone, approach with precision, charm them with practiced ease, and Claire would stand beside him, silent and decorative, acknowledged only when social convention demanded it. This is Claire. Always the same introduction, never my wife, just Claire. As if her relationship to him was irrelevant, as if she was an accessory he'd brought along because it was expected. She didn't complain. She didn't protest. She simply existed in the margins of his ambition, the way she had learned to do. But something was building inside her, something quiet and cold. Dinner was announced at 7:30. The crowd migrated toward the tables, conversations fragmenting and reforming as people found their assigned seats. Daniel checked his phone for their table number. Table 12, he said. That's close to the front. Good. They wove through the room. Claire noticed the way people looked at Daniel, with interest, with recognition, and she noticed the way they looked at her, with polite indifference. She was the woman beside the man who mattered, nothing more. They reached table 12. Already seated were three other couples, all dressed in the careful elegance that money could buy. Introductions were made, names Claire wouldn't remember, titles that sounded impressive. Everyone smiled, everyone was polite, and everyone directed their questions toward Daniel. What do you do? Who do you work for? What brings you here tonight? He answered with the kind of ease that comes from repetition. Claire sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, and said almost nothing. No one asked her anything. Dinner was served in courses, each plate a work of art, each conversation a careful dance of networking and subtle status signaling. Daniel was in his element. He laughed at the right moments, asked insightful questions, dropped names casually. Claire watched him work the table. She picked at her food, sipped her wine slowly, and felt herself disappearing a little more with each passing minute. At one point, the woman across from her, a blonde in her 40s with diamond earrings that could have financed a car, leaned forward slightly. And what do you do, Claire? She asked. It was the first time anyone had spoken directly to her in over an hour. Claire looked up, momentarily surprised to be addressed. I used to work in architecture, she said carefully, but I've been focused on other things recently. The woman smiled politely. How nice, she said, in a tone that meant how unimportant. Then she turned back to the man beside her and resumed a conversation about vacation homes. Claire set down her fork. She wasn't hungry anymore. Dessert arrived, some kind of elaborate chocolate creation with gold leaf. Daniel barely touched his. He was too focused on the man 2 tables over. Mitchell, the executive he'd been chasing all night. I need to talk to him, Daniel muttered, more to himself than to Claire. She said nothing. The plates were cleared, the lights dimmed slightly. A woman in a burgundy gown stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room. Good evening, everyone, she said into the microphone, her voice smooth and practiced. We'll be starting our program in just a few moments, but first we'd like to take a moment to recognize some of the incredible individuals in attendance tonight. The crowd settled. Daniel's leg bounced under the table. He was waiting for his moment. Claire could feel it radiating off him. The woman on stage continued speaking, highlighting various achievements, introducing key sponsors, and then she said something that made Daniel sit up straighter. We're also pleased to have several distinguished guests joining us this evening, including members of the Regional Development Council, the Mayor's Office, and representatives from the State Commerce Division. Daniel's eyes lit up. "This is it," he whispered. "After this, there's going to be a reception. That's when I make my move." Claire nodded slowly. She felt tired, bone tired, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. The program continued. Awards were given, speeches were made. Polite applause filled the hall at regular intervals. Claire clapped when everyone else did, smiled when smiling was expected, and felt herself becoming smaller and smaller. At one point, Daniel leaned close to her. "When we go to the reception, I need you to just blend in. Let me do the talking." She turned to look at him, really look at him. His eyes were bright with ambition, his jaw set with determination. He looked like a man on the verge of something great, and he looked at her like she was an obstacle. "Okay," she said quietly. He smiled, satisfied, and turned his attention back to the stage. Claire looked down at her hands. She had stopped wearing her wedding ring to bed months ago, not because she wanted to, but because Daniel never noticed whether she wore it or not. Tonight, it sat on her finger, cold and heavy, a symbol of something that no longer felt real. The program concluded. The lights came back up slightly. The crowd began to rise, conversations resuming, people gravitating toward the reception area being set up near the windows. Daniel stood immediately. "Let's go," he said. Claire rose slowly. She smoothed her dress, picked up her purse, and followed him into the crowd. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The reception area had been transformed. High-top tables scattered throughout the space. Ambient lighting that made everything feel both intimate and grand. Waiters circulating with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The energy was different here, less formal, more fluid. This was where the real business happened, where deals were hinted at over drinks, where alliances were formed in casual conversation. Daniel moved through the space with purpose, his eyes tracking Mitchell's position near the far windows. Claire trailed behind, her presence an afterthought. They stopped at one of the high-top tables. Daniel set down his drink and adjusted his cufflinks, preparing himself. "Wait here," he said without looking at her. "I'm going to approach Mitchell when he's alone." Claire nodded. She watched him scan the room, calculating, strategizing, and then she saw his face change. Opportunity. Mitchell had stepped away from his conversation group, momentarily isolated near the windows. "Now," Daniel muttered. He started forward, then stopped, turned back to Claire. "Actually," he said, "come with me. It looks better if I'm not alone." She blinked. "You just said—" "I know what I said. Just come. But don't talk unless you're spoken to." He was already walking. Claire followed, her heels clicking against the marble floor. They approached Mitchell just as he was checking his phone. "Mr. Mitchell," Daniel said, his voice warm and confident. "Daniel Hastings. I've been hoping to get a chance to speak with you this evening." Mitchell looked up. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the kind of face that gave nothing away. "Hastings," he said, as if testing the name. "Remind me?" "I'm with Carson Financial, Senior VP. We've been doing some interesting work in infrastructure investment that I think might align with some of your current projects." Mitchell's expression remained neutral. "Is that right?" he said, not quite a question. "Absolutely. I'd love to schedule some time to walk you through—" "Who's this?" Mitchell's eyes had shifted to Claire. There was a pause, just a heartbeat. But in that pause, Claire felt something shift in the air. Daniel smiled. That same practiced, charming smile. "Oh," he said, his tone light, almost dismissive. "This is my maid." The words hung in the air. Claire's world tilted. Everything slowed down. The music seemed distant. The conversations around them faded into white noise. She stared at Daniel, waiting for him to correct himself, waiting for the punchline, waiting for anything that would make this make sense. But he just stood there smiling at Mitchell, already pivoting the conversation back to business. "As I was saying, we've been working on—" "Your maid," Mitchell's voice cut through. His eyes moved from Daniel to Claire, then back to Daniel. There was something in his expression now, something cold. "Yes," Daniel said, barely glancing at Claire. "Anyway, about the infrastructure portfolio. You brought your maid to a business gala." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and the tone made it clear what Mitchell thought of that. Daniel's smile faltered for just a second. "Well, she helps out with things, and I thought—" And you introduced her to me as your maid. Now other people were starting to notice. Conversations nearby were quieting. Heads were turning. Claire stood frozen. Her face was hot. Her hands were shaking. But she didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there, every eye in the vicinity now on her, as her husband, scrambled to recover. It's not. I mean, she does work for me, in a sense. She manages the household. Mr. Hastings, Mitchell's voice was ice. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here, but I can assure you, this is not the way to make a professional impression. He looked at Claire once more. His expression had shifted. Not pity exactly, something else. Something that made Claire want to disappear into the floor. Ma'am, he said, nodding slightly. Then he walked away. The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel stood there, his face flushed, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for words that wouldn't come. People were staring now, not openly, but Claire could feel it. The sideways glances, the whispered conversations, the judgment. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and for the first time in years she saw him clearly. Not as the man she'd married, not as the partner she'd believed in, but as someone small, someone desperate, someone who would humiliate her to make himself feel important. Claire, he started. She held up her hand, not dramatically, not angrily, just enough. Don't, she said quietly. Her voice was steady, steadier than she expected. I need some air, she said, and she walked away. Claire found herself near the windows on the far side of the reception area, away from the crowd, away from the stairs. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and focused on breathing, in, out. She wasn't crying. She wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Just a hollow ache in her chest where something vital used to be. Behind her, she could hear the gala continuing. Laughter, conversation, the clinking of glasses. As if nothing had happened. As if she didn't matter enough for anything to stop. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it. It buzzed again. She pulled it out. 3 texts from Daniel. Where are you? We need to talk. You're embarrassing me. She stared at the last message, read it twice, then turned her phone off and put it away. She stood there for a long time, watching her reflection in the dark window, a woman in a navy dress, hair done perfectly, makeup still intact, looking from the outside like she belonged here, but inside she felt like a stranger, to this room, to this life, to herself. Excuse me, the voice came from behind her. Claire turned. A woman stood a few feet away. Older, maybe late 50s, silver hair pulled back elegantly, sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. I'm sorry to intrude, the woman said, but I wanted to check if you were all right. Claire's instinct was to lie, to smile and say she was fine. That's what she'd been doing for years. But something in the woman's expression stopped her. Claire started, then stopped. I don't know. The woman nodded slowly. I saw what happened, she said gently, with Mitchell. Claire's face burned. I'm so embarrassed, she whispered. You shouldn't be, the woman said firmly. You did nothing wrong. Claire looked away. He's my husband. The words felt strange in her mouth. The woman was quiet for a moment, then she extended her hand. Margaret Whitmore, she said. Claire shook it hesitantly. Claire Hastings. I know, Margaret said softly. I used to work with someone who had your last name on their resume. An architect. Brilliant portfolio. Claire's breath caught. That was me. A long time ago. Margaret smiled sadly. Not that long ago, I imagine. They stood in silence for a moment. I won't keep you, Margaret said. I just wanted to say, what he did was unforgivable, and you deserve better than being made invisible. Claire felt something crack inside her chest. Thank you, she managed. Margaret squeezed her hand once gently, then walked away, leaving Claire alone again, but somehow less alone than before. Claire didn't return to Daniel right away. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she found a quiet alcove near the coat check, away from the reception, away from the eyes, and sat down on a cushioned bench. Her hands were still shaking. She laced her fingers together and squeezed until they stopped. Around her, the gala continued, muffled laughter, the string quartet playing something elegant and forgettable. She thought about how she'd gotten here, not just to this building, but to this moment, this version of herself. 7 years of marriage. When had it started to go wrong? Claire tried to pinpoint the moment, but there wasn't one. It was 1,000 small moments. The first time Daniel had taken credit for an idea she'd suggested. The first time he'd made a decision without consulting her. The first time he'd introduced her at an event and failed to mention what she did for a living. Each moment on its own was forgivable, easy to overlook, easy to excuse as stress or distraction or just the reality of busy lives. But they'd accumulated, layer upon layer, until Claire looked up one day and realized she'd been buried. She thought about the architecture firm she'd left. She'd been good at her job. No, she'd been better than good. She'd won a regional award for a community center she'd designed. She'd been on the path to junior partner. But Daniel's career had demanded more time, more energy, more focus, and someone had to give. So she had. Temporarily, she thought, just until things settled. But things never settled. Daniel's career only accelerated, and Claire's own ambitions became someday plans, then maybe plans, then nothing at all. She tried to talk to him about it once, about 2 years ago. They'd been having dinner at home, a rare night when he wasn't working late. "I've been thinking," she'd said carefully, "about maybe reaching out to some firms, just to see what's out there. Part-time, maybe." Daniel had looked up from his plate. "Why would you do that?" "Because I miss it," she'd said simply. "I miss designing. I miss..." "Claire, I make more than enough for both of us. You don't need to work." It's not about need, it's about... And honestly, with my schedule the way it is, it really helps to have you managing things at home. I don't have to worry about anything. That's huge. He'd smiled at her, like he'd given her a compliment, like he'd just explained why her sacrifice was actually a gift. Claire had put down her fork. "Right," she'd said quietly. The conversation had ended there. She never brought it up again. Now sitting alone in an alcove at a gala where her husband had introduced her as his maid, Claire felt the full weight of those years. All the small surrenders, all the quiet erasures, all the times she'd made herself smaller so he could feel bigger. And for what? So he could humiliate her in a room full of strangers? So he could reduce her to something even less than invisible? Her phone buzzed again in her purse. She pulled it out. 5 more messages from Daniel. "Where the hell are you? People are asking questions. You need to come back. This is ridiculous. We'll talk about this at home." She read them all, then deleted them, one by one. 20 minutes passed, maybe 30. Claire wasn't sure. Time felt strange here, elastic and unmoored. She knew she should go back, face him, face the room, but she couldn't make herself stand up. Not yet. Eventually, a waiter passed by and noticed her sitting alone. "Can I get you anything, ma'am?" he asked politely. She looked up at him. Young, probably early 20s, kind eyes. "No, thank you," she said softly. "I'm fine." He nodded and moved on, but the question lingered. Can I get you anything? What did she need? What could anyone possibly get her that would make this better? She thought about leaving, just walking out, calling a car, going home, locking herself in the guest bedroom and never coming out. But something stopped her. Not loyalty to Daniel, not fear of making a scene, something else. A tiny ember of something she'd thought was dead. Pride. She'd spent years disappearing, years letting herself be erased. If she left now, she'd be doing it again. Running, hiding, making herself smaller. And she was done being small. Claire stood up, smoothed her dress, checked her reflection in a nearby mirror. She looked composed, dignified even. No one would know looking at her what was happening inside. She took a breath and walked back toward the reception. The crowd had thinned slightly. Some people had migrated to the bar area. Others stood in tight clusters, deep in conversation. Claire scanned the room. She found Daniel near the center. He was talking to someone she didn't recognize. His body language was tense. She could see it from across the room. The rigid shoulders, the forced smile. He was trying to recover, trying to salvage the night. She walked toward him slowly. He saw her coming. For a second, something like relief crossed his face. Then it hardened into annoyance. She reached his side. The person he'd been talking to, a man in his 40s, glanced at her briefly, then excused himself. Daniel waited until he was out of earshot. "Where have you been?" he hissed. Claire looked at him calmly. "I needed a minute," she said. "A minute?" His voice was low but sharp. "You've been gone for half an hour. Do you have any idea how that looks?" She almost laughed. "How that looks." "Daniel," she said quietly, "you introduced me as your maid." "I made a mistake," he said quickly. "I was nervous. Mitchell threw me off. I didn't mean—" "You didn't correct yourself." He blinked. "What?" "When he repeated it back to you, you didn't correct yourself. You kept talking about business." His jaw tightened. "Because I was trying to salvage the conversation. You don't understand how important—" "I understand perfectly," she said. Her voice was still quiet, still steady, but there was something in it now, something that made Daniel stop mid-sentence. "Claire, I understand that your career matters more than I do. That's not fair. I understand that you see me as part of the household, part of the help, not your partner. You're twisting this." "Am I?" They stared at each other. People were glancing over again, sensing tension. Daniel took a breath and lowered his voice even further. "Look," he said, forcing calm into his tone. "I messed up. I admit it. But we can fix this. We just need to get through the rest of the night, and tomorrow we'll—" "I'm not doing this anymore." The words came out before she'd fully thought them through. But once they were out, she knew they were true. Daniel's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not doing this, this marriage, this life where I don't exist." "Claire, stop. You're being emotional. This isn't the place." "You made it the place," she said. "You humiliated me in front of everyone here. You made me invisible, and you don't even see what you did wrong." "I said I was sorry." "No, you didn't." He opened his mouth, then closed it, because she was right. He hadn't apologized. Not once. Before he could respond, someone approached them. A man in a dark suit, official looking. "Mr. Hastings?" he said. Daniel turned, his expression shifting instantly back to professional. "Yes? I'm with the event coordination team. We have someone here who'd like to speak with you." Daniel blinked. "Who?" She didn't give her name, but she said it was important. He glanced at Claire, then back at the man. "Where?" "Just over here, sir." Daniel looked at Claire one more time. "Stay here," he said. "We're not done." Then he followed the man toward a quieter section of the hall. Claire watched him go, and she felt, for the first time all night, something like relief. He was gone, even if just for a moment. She was alone, and that was better than being invisible beside him. She stood there in the middle of the reception, surrounded by people she didn't know, and she waited. Not for Daniel, for something else. She didn't know what yet, but she could feel it coming. The reception area had settled into a comfortable hum of conversation and clinking glasses. Claire stood near one of the high-top tables, her champagne untouched, her eyes following Daniel as he disappeared into a side hallway with the event coordinator. She should have felt anxious, should have wondered what was happening, but instead she felt strangely calm, like a weight she'd been carrying for years had finally been set down. Minutes passed, 5, maybe more. Claire was vaguely aware of people moving around her. A woman laughed somewhere to her left. A waiter refilled glasses at the table beside her. The string quartet transitioned into something softer, and then she saw them. Daniel emerged from the hallway, but he wasn't alone. Behind him was the event coordinator, and beside the coordinator was a woman Claire recognized, Margaret Whitmore, the woman who had spoken to her earlier. They walked toward the center of the reception area, and as they did, Claire noticed something shift in the room. Conversations tapered off. People turned. There was something about the way Margaret carried herself. Authority without arrogance. Presence without performance. The event coordinator said something to one of the staff members, and within moments, a microphone was being set up near the front of the space. Claire's heartbeat quickened. What was happening? Daniel looked confused, annoyed even. He kept glancing back toward the hallway, like he wanted to leave but couldn't figure out how to extract himself politely. Margaret stepped up to the microphone. The room quieted almost instantly. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice clear and measured. "I apologize for the interruption. I know this is a social event, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but I felt it was important to address something that happened earlier this evening." Claire's breath caught. Daniel's face had gone pale. "My name is Margaret Whitmore," she continued. "Some of you may know me. I'm the Director of Strategic Development for the State Commerce Division." A ripple went through the crowd. People were paying attention now, real attention. "I've been attending this gala for 15 years, Margaret said, and in that time, I've met a lot of impressive people, talented executives, visionary entrepreneurs. People who understand that success isn't just about numbers, it's about character." She paused. "Earlier tonight, I witnessed something that troubled me deeply." Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. "I watched a man introduce his wife, as his maid." The silence in the room was absolute. "To be clear," Margaret continued, "this wasn't a joke. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a deliberate choice, made in front of a colleague, made, I suspect, because he believed it would make him appear more important, more impressive." Claire felt every eye in the room on her, but Margaret wasn't done. "What he didn't know," she said, her tone sharpening just slightly, "is that the woman he introduced as his maid is Claire Hastings. Some of you may remember her from her work at Morrison & Associates. She designed the Riverside Community Center. She was shortlisted for the Jefferson Award for Emerging Architects." Claire's heart was pounding. She hadn't heard her own accomplishments spoken aloud in years. "She gave up her career," Margaret continued, "to support her husband's ambitions. And tonight, he repaid her by erasing her entirely." Daniel tried to speak. This is..." Margaret held up a hand, not aggressively, just enough. "Mr. Hastings, I'm not interested in your explanations. I'm interested in making sure everyone in this room understands what kind of person you are." She turned to address the crowd. "I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't do business with people who treat their partners like servants. I don't invest in people who see other human beings as props for their own advancement." She looked back at Daniel. "You wanted to make an impression tonight. Congratulations. You succeeded." The silence that followed was crushing. Daniel stood frozen. His face was red. His hands were shaking. He looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone who might offer support, but people looked away. Or worse, they stared at him with expressions that ranged from disgust to pity. Claire watched him realize what was happening. He'd been exposed, not just to one person, to everyone. Margaret stepped away from the microphone. She walked directly to Claire. "I'm sorry I did that without asking you first," she said quietly, "but I couldn't stand by and let him get away with it." Claire didn't know what to say. Her throat was tight. Her eyes were burning. "Thank you," she finally whispered. Margaret squeezed her arm gently. "You deserve to be seen," she said. "Really seen. Not as someone's accessory, as yourself." Then she walked away, leaving Claire standing in the center of the room. Daniel approached her. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage. "What the hell did you do?" he hissed. Claire looked at him. "I didn't do anything," she said calmly. "You did this. That woman had no right." "She had every right. She told the truth. You should have stopped her." "Why would I do that?" He stared at her, incredulous. "Because you're my wife." "Am I?" The question hung between them. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. "We're leaving," he finally said. "No," Claire said. "What?" "You can leave if you want, but I'm staying." "Claire." "I'm done, Daniel." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I'm done being invisible. I'm done making myself small so you can feel big. I'm done." He looked at her like she was a stranger. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, and Claire realized something. She wasn't afraid. Not of him. Not of what came next. Not of being alone. Because being alone was better than this. Daniel turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He pushed through the crowd, grabbed his coat from the check, and left the building. Claire watched him go and felt nothing but relief. The gala continued, but the energy had shifted. Conversations resumed, but they were quieter now, more subdued. People kept glancing at Claire. Not with pity exactly, with something else. Curiosity maybe, respect. She stood alone for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. Then slowly people began to approach her. The first was an older man in a well-tailored suit. "Ms. Hastings," he said gently, "I'm Richard Torres. I sit on the board at Morrison and Associates." Claire recognized the name. "Hello," she said. "I just wanted to say, what happened tonight was inexcusable. But Margaret was right. Your work was exceptional. Still is, I'm sure." He handed her a business card. "If you're ever interested in returning to architecture, please call me. We'd be lucky to have you." Claire took the card, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and walked away. Others followed. A woman who ran a design firm, a man who worked in urban planning, someone who remembered her community center project and wanted to tell her how much it meant to the neighborhood. Each conversation was brief. Each one felt surreal. But together they formed something Claire hadn't felt in years. Validation. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's support system, as herself. Eventually, Margaret returned. "How are you holding up?" she asked. Claire let out a long breath. "I honestly don't know," she admitted. "This whole night feels like a dream. A nightmare, more like. Both, maybe." Margaret smiled sadly. "What will you do now?" Claire looked around the room, at the chandeliers, the marble floors, the people in their expensive clothes. "I'm going to go home," she said quietly. "And tomorrow I'm going to figure out what my life looks like without him." Margaret nodded. "That takes courage." "Or desperation," Claire said with a weak smile. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Claire collected her coat. As she walked toward the exit, she passed the table where she and Daniel had been seated during dinner. The other couples were still there, talking quietly. One of them, the blonde woman with the diamond earrings, looked up as Claire passed. Their eyes met. The woman opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it and looked away. Claire kept walking. Outside, the November air was sharp and cold. Claire stood on the steps of the Riverside Grand Hall, looking out at the city. The lights, the traffic, the endless movement. She'd lived here for 7 years, but tonight it felt like she was seeing it for the first time. A valet approached. "Can I call you a car, ma'am?" "Yes, please," she said. While she waited, she turned her phone back on. 17 missed calls from Daniel, 12 text messages. She didn't read them. Instead, she opened her contacts and found a name she hadn't called in over a year. Her best friend from college, Emma. She hit dial. It rang 3 times. "Claire?" Emma's voice was surprised. "Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you?" Claire's voice cracked. "Emma," she said, "can I stay with you for a few days?" There was a pause. "Of course," Emma said immediately. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I will be," Claire said. "I think I will be." The car arrived. Claire climbed in and gave the driver Emma's address. As they pulled away from the hall, she looked back one last time. The building was still lit up. The gala still happening. People still networking, still laughing, still playing their parts. But Claire wasn't part of that world anymore. She didn't know what her world would look like now. But for the first time in years, it would be hers. 3 weeks later, Claire sat in a coffee shop near Emma's apartment. Her laptop was open in front of her. Her portfolio, neglected for years, was pulled up on the screen. It needed updating. A lot had changed, but the bones were still there. The passion was still there. She'd spent the past 3 weeks figuring out the logistics. A lawyer, separation paperwork. Moving her things out of the house while Daniel was at work. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. But it was also strangely liberating. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously. "Ms. Hastings, this is Richard Torres from Morrison and Associates. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out personally to let you know we have an opening for a senior designer position. If you're interested, I'd love to set up a time to talk. No pressure, just an opportunity. Claire read the message twice, then 3 times. She set her phone down and looked out the window. The city was moving around her, people living their lives, chasing their dreams, making mistakes, trying again. She picked up her phone and typed a response. Thank you, Mr. Torres. I'd very much like to talk. When works for you? She hit send and smiled. 6 months later, Claire stood in front of a scale model on her desk, a mixed-use development project, residential, commercial, green space, her design, her vision. The team at Morrison and Associates had welcomed her back like she'd never left. The work was challenging, the hours were long, but it was hers. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since the night of the gala. The divorce was moving forward, slowly but steadily. He'd tried to reach out a few times in the beginning. Angry texts, apologetic voicemails, attempts at negotiation. She'd ignored all of it. Eventually, he'd stopped. Emma knocked on her office door. You coming to lunch? Claire looked up. Yeah, just give me 5 minutes. Emma grinned. You're different, you know. Different how? Happier. You look, I don't know, like yourself again. Claire considered that. I think I'm finally figuring out who that is, she said. Emma nodded. Good, she said. You deserve to know. That evening, Claire walked through the city. No destination, just walking, thinking, breathing. She passed the Riverside Grand Hall, the place where everything had changed. The lights were off tonight. No event, just a building. She stood there for a moment, looking up at it, and then she kept walking, because she wasn't that person anymore. The woman who'd stood in that building, invisible and erased. She was someone else now, someone stronger, someone whole. A year after the gala, Claire received an invitation in the mail, the Regional Business Coalition's annual event. She stared at it for a long time. Then she RSVP'd. Yes. The night of the gala, Claire arrived alone. She wore a dress she'd chosen herself, bold, elegant, unmistakably hers. She walked into the Riverside Grand Hall with her head high. People recognized her. Some approached to say hello. Others just nodded respectfully. Margaret Whitmore found her near the bar. You came, Margaret said warmly. I almost didn't, Claire admitted. What changed your mind? Claire thought about it. I realized I don't have to be afraid of this place anymore. It doesn't define me. What happened here doesn't define me. Margaret smiled. No, she said. It doesn't. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Margaret raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said. Claire raised hers. To being seen, she said. They clinked glasses. And somewhere in the room, beneath the same chandeliers that had witnessed her humiliation, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. That night, no one applauded louder than the silence. The silence of a woman who had finally found her voice. The silence of a life reclaimed. The silence of dignity restored. And in that silence, Claire Hastings was finally, completely, undeniably free.